So the other day I was asked to come up with a system to manage professional development objectives, CPD requests and the like. And we have a system at school which we pay a lot of money for, which is a web-based system where people put objectives for the year for professional development, and line managers put overview statements, and things like lesson observations and CPD activities go into it as well. Nobody seems to particularly like that system, so I was asked to come up with something that was simpler, did the job, didn't cost any money. So this is it. So here I've got a Google Apps user I created for the purpose called ProDev at weeklypart.org, because I didn't want this associated with any particular person, and it's got one folder in its drive called ProDev System. And this user has ownership of a Google site. Okay, so this is the site. The name is purely a code because this is still sort of in development, but the home page has got some instructions for members of staff, and we've got a submit objectives page, and on here we've got a Google form which will allow a person to submit 3 objectives. So once you've submitted your first objective, it takes you to page 2 and so on. You can request the CPD activity, so the activity provider, intended outcome, date of activity and so on, and click on submit. And if you're somebody who's a line manager, you can complete an overview statement. So that's again just another Google form, and you can select a person and so on and click submit. So from the point of view of the end user, that's it at the moment. There might be a couple of other things on there, but it doesn't need to be any more complex than that. So when these forms are submitted, what happens is the information gets put into a Google document which is owned by the ProDev user, and that document shared with the relevant people. So if you were submitted objectives, it would be shared with you as the person submitting the objectives, and it would go to your line manager as well. And what the line manager would do is have a look at them, have a conversation about them via the Google Doc, and onto the Google documents they would approve or suggest modifications to those objectives. And the same really goes for the CPD activities and the overview statements. It goes to the 2 people who are sort of important in this discussion. Those documents end up in either this folder, CPD applications, or this one. Now, these are not shared with anybody else, well, with the exception of the head teacher, but the documents within this folder can be edited by the people who are important in the process. So underlying all of this, there are a couple of templates which are Google documents, so one for appraisal, one for CPD activities. Actually I can get rid of that one, this is the live one, and one for overview statements. There's another one for lesson observations which I haven't put on yet. And they are linked together by a couple of forms. So in here you've got 3 forms and 3 spreadsheets with the results of whatever's gone into it. So this is the CPD activity one. This hasn't been used much yet, so it's just got a few sort of test ones from me, so the results go in there. This uses the add-ons Copy Down and Autocrat. Autocrat does the mail merging of the documents. Copy Down copies down literally just one formula because that's all it really needs. And up here, what I have to do is when the person submits some data, I have to deduce who that person's line manager is, get the line manager's email, and get the initials of the person who's submitting it. And what I've got in here is a table of names, email addresses and so on. Now I've only got one, because each one of these spreadsheets just uses an import range function to pull it in. I won't go on to that because it's got real names of people on there. James Clark won't mind being on a YouTube video. But in this cell here, the way that I pull off the data, so these three columns are populated by one spreadsheet function. So it's a query function. It queries a defined name that I've called staff, which is the table over here, and it selects F, I and C. So these columns, so you can select them in whatever order you want, where D, which is the email of the person, equals idnixon@weeklypark.org. That's me. So basically you can pull off all that information with one function. You don't need any more than that. So I've tried to keep this, as I say, as simple as possible, so there's not much to go wrong. So there's really only a couple of formulas that make the whole thing work. To make it easy for people like the head teacher who are overviewing everything, the one where the objectives go in, I've considered to be a master sheet. So if we go into here, you see objective 1, 2, 3 and so on, and over here you've got a very similar formula. It's giving an error because ProDev isn't actually one of the people in the list of staff, but it is a very similar formula. It returns the line manager, the line manager's email and the initials of the person. But what I've also got here is the same staff grid, which is basically a grid of all the email addresses, initials and stuff of staff, and that's the one place I would keep things up to date. All the other forms spreadsheets are populated from this one using an import range function, so there's no need to update it in 3 different places. You only ever need to update stuff in one place. So the overview statements, which are populated by a different form, are brought into this sheet using an import range function. So that data comes into this sheet. CPD requests come into this sheet using another import range function. So we've got 3 forms, but all the information is being collected into one spreadsheet, which makes it easy for the person who's looking at the sort of overview of everything. So from the point of view of the person who's looking at stuff, like a head teacher for example, all they need to do is look at this tab. And this tab, everything here is populated by 3 functions. So what I've got here is a drop down with all of the staff initials, and I pick me because nobody else has got anything yet. I'm already picked, huh? Okay, you can see that it pulled. If I pick something, I don't know, ADA, you'll see there's nothing there. Okay, but if I go to R and I, there's quite a lot of stuff. Oh yeah, you'll see that will populate with the test set of objectives that I've submitted. And the way that that works is again just another query function which lives in here. So everything in those lines there is populated by one function. So it equals query form response. So this is looking in this sheet here, and it's selecting the columns of data that I'm interested in, where N, which is the column that has the person who's been appraised initials in, is that there. So that's just been populated from a list in here. Overview statement again, so I could look up somebody's overview statement, and because this is using Autocrat, you get a link to the document. So as a head teacher, I can just click on the link and go straight to the objectives of that particular person. And CPD, this will pull off all CPD activities of that particular person, and again it'll take you to a link to the document for that CPD activity. You can see that I'm quite ambitious in my CPD activity there. But again, if I pick somebody who hasn't got anything, there's nothing there. If In fact, the only person who's got anything is me at the moment, because I've just been fiddling around with it. But the only bits I've typed into here are the word objectives, overview, CPD, a list of names here, here and here, and 3 query functions. So that gives the professional development coordinator and the head teacher a really easy overview of those documents and what's going on. Anyways, it's a system in development, but that's it at the moment. But it is relatively simple, but it just uses a combination of Google Sites, front end for staff, Google Sheets, forms, and a handful of spreadsheet functions to do what otherwise costs us thousands and thousands of pounds. It took a couple of hours for me to fiddle around and set up. Anyways, might be of interest to somebody who's considering the same sort of thing.